Hello, welcome to the live. So, today I will be talking about my February reading wrap-up, which are these, plus an ebook. So, as before, what I'm going to do is I'll just go through and read the title and maybe like a sentence or two about these books, and then if you're watching this on the replay, then you could just kind of scroll to the one that you want to know more about, because after I go through and say the one sentence or two, I'll go into more descriptions. So I have, how many did I read? I read 7 books. So it didn't feel like that many. I don't know why I thought I read way less. But anyway, so the first one is The Rebellious Widow by Jill Johnson Young, LCSW. Love the title. So this book is about and for spouses and partners who have lost their spouse or partner due to death. So that is that one. The next one is Efren Divided. Love the cover. And so this is I believe it's a middle grade fiction, but it's based off of real life, which is the main character in this mother is deported to Mexico. So that is Efren Divided by Ernesto Cisneros. The next one is Why are all the black kids sitting together in the cafeteria by Dr. Beverly Daniel Tatum. This is one of the books I read for Black History Month, which is this month, and this one is written by a psychologist who taught and spoke and did like workshops on racial identity development and ended up creating this book based off of her speakings and workshops. The next one is The Nickel Boys, a novel by Colson Whitehead. So this is it's interesting. It's more like historical fiction. The school that this book is based off of is actually a real school. So this is essentially a school for youth, and during this time it was also segregated between blacks and whites. And so this is a story of what happens when the main character is sent to that school. The next one is Displacement by Kiku, Hughes. This is a graphic novel, it's part fiction, part memoir, based off of the author's grandmother's story of living in the Japanese internment camp in Topaz. So that's Displacement. The next one is Don't Hug Doug, He Doesn't Like It by Carrie, Finison. So obviously this is a children's illustrated book. And essentially this story is about Doug, who doesn't like hugs, but this book is about consent and asking permission before doing something. And the final one was an ebook, The Mana Paradigm Shift, Creating the Consciousness of Abundance and Freedom by Dr. Davina Kotulski. Oops, ring light. So this book is a nonfiction self-empowerment about how to free yourself from negative thinking so that you can live better. So that is that one. So let's go through these one by one here. A little more of a description. I've got 20 minutes until my next client. Okay, so the first one, love this book, The Rebellious Widow by Jill Johnson Young, LCSW. Jill, if her name sounds familiar, you probably have seen some of her interviews on the news, as well as if you're familiar with my podcast and you've listened to it, she was a previous guest on it. So she was on, I believe, last spring, talking about her book, Your Own Path through Grief. Let me get it here. Your Own Path Through Grief. So she came on before talking about that one. And this is her new book. So this actually comes out tomorrow, March 1st. And And so Jill has lived experience herself. Before the age of 40, she lost 2 spouses to death. And so this book is a combo of like bits of her story, as well as a lot of really great information and takeaways for spouses as they prepare for their partner's death, when the partner does die, and then afterwards. So there's a lot about how to cope with it, the roles, talks about hospice, and what to do afterwards, being a widow. And she herself has been a widow. This book was really, really good because just like her other ones, and she's really good at taking a topic and giving you really, really good takeaways and actual things that you can apply to yourself and into your weekly life. So this is almost kind of in a way like a nice little a little guide. And it's just packed. It doesn't look like that big of a book, but it's packed with some really great information. So I would highly recommend this. If you or anyone you know is experiencing grief for the upcoming death of a partner, or the partner had already died. She will be on the podcast. So we already recorded our episode together, and the episode where she is on the Books Between Sessions podcast talking about this book will be mid-March. So I will post the date, but just so you know, our episode will be going live next month. Okay, so that is The Rebellious Widow by Jill Johnson Young. The next one I finished this morning, Efren Divided by Ernesto Cisneros. Look at how cool that cover is. So this is a middle grade fiction. This is a local author. The author is originally from Santa Ana. So this book is about the main character, Efren, whose mother ends up getting deported to Mexico. So obviously this is real, right? So this is something that has been happening and that is happening. There is some talk about like ICE, and like it's also talking about what the family's experience is like when, you know, the mother went to work essentially and then never came home, and then come to find out that the workplace was ICE came in and did raid and ended up deporting those there that were undocumented. So this is a really good book. I feel like this hit a really important topic, and I like how it's, you know, from the perspective of a child, but also a child who's the oldest sibling, and you know, the role he took on, and you know what he did to try to help take care of the siblings. Talks about a really great relationship he has with his mother and his father and the community, and also there's some topics around like friendship and kind of some stuff that happens within a friendship. So this book is really, really good. Highly recommend it. Like I said, I believe it's more of a middle grade fiction. So that's Efren Divided. Okay. The next one is Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? And Other Conversations About Race by Dr. Beverly Daniel Tatum. So I have the old cover. There is a newer edition with like a different cover. So this book actually came out a while ago. I think the copyright I have is from like the 90s. But super, super important. So essentially, this author is a psychologist that studied racial identity development. And so she had been doing like speakings and workshops. And so she essentially created this book off of the education and like the discussions that she had at her workshop, which ultimately not only was to answer this question, but it's cool because this book goes through racial identity development and then through like the ages, starting with like childhood all the way through adulthood, and also touches on all the other the POC ethnicities. So this book comes from the stance of someone who is in the mental health field, which I thought, and an educator. So I thought that blend made this book really, really good. And it is still, even though this came out a while ago, I mean, this book is still relevant and is a very, very important topic. I like how some of the examples that she had used not only were from the workshop she did and what the discussions were for the students, and some of these were adults as well, in her classes, but also some real life experiences of how she handled talking about race with her children. Even her child that was like really like little, like, you know, taking the opportunity in like a shoe store. There was like one instance like a shoe store where her child, who was like really young at the time, asked like, how come those like that mom and that child don't match? And essentially it was the color of the skin. And so she used that as an opportunity, like, all right, here we go. We're going to talk about this. I'm going to talk about, you know, how sometimes parents don't match in the color, and they're still like, you know, mom and son. So I like how it also incorporated how to have this talk with children. And there was another one in the grocery store. I mean, she really used like concrete methods too to explain this to young children, which is a skill. So I highly recommend this book. If you haven't read it, I definitely recommend that you read it. If you look up anti-racism books, you know, you're gonna see this on there, and for a good reason. I felt like this is a wonderful book. So you can see by my annotations. So that is Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? The next one is The Nickel Boys, a novel by Colson Whitehead. So this book, I saw this, this had been on my TBR for a while, and I saw it when I was at one of the local bookstores here in Orange County called Arvita in Tustin. And it's a fiction, but this was taken from a school, like inspired by a school. So, and I'll get into that in a minute. But anyway, what happens is this young teen ends up getting in trouble, and it's a total misunderstanding. And this was like decades ago, right? When segregation was still like occurring, initially. And so he was sent to this like reform school, in the South, and so this goes through what he experienced there. So there are topics of racism, abuse, rape, and that is and this was a boys' school, what they had been experiencing at this reform school. So it was like someone gets in trouble, and then they're sent to this and it's a youth, they get sent to this reform school. So it's like a school, but also like violence. So this talks about that and how things just went so wrong for this person, and it's heartbreaking because this is a character who in his youth there was a lot of potential, and he was already achieving things academically, and was on his way to that, and then this terrible thing happened. So anyway, like I said, this takes after the idea of this book came after a real a school. So it's called the Dozer School for Boys in Florida, which was a reform school that operated until 2011. It's only 10 years ago. So from 1900 to 2011, there was this reform school in Florida for children ages 3 to 11. And the Florida Department of Law Enforcement did deem it a place that abuse and violence had occurred. So super, super sad, super terrible. But that's essentially where the idea of this book came from. So highly recommend it. The next one is Displacement by Kiku Hughes. This is another one that had been on my TBR for a while. It's a graphic novel, half memoir, half fiction. So the illustrations are wonderful. And this is essentially was inspired by the author's grandmother, who was sent to a Japanese internment camp in Topaz. So this book touches on that, which is a historical thing that had happened. The Japanese Americans were sent to internment camps. And so it talks about that as well as intergenerational trauma. And essentially the character had never met the grandmother, but all of a sudden was on vacation in San Francisco, and then all of a sudden transported back to 1942 to Topaz, to the internment camp that her grandma was in, as if she was there. So and it was back in that time, getting on the train, going there, going to the camp, all that. And how she kind of was following around her grandmother and started connecting the dots. So This was an amazing book, highly important topic. The illustrations are great, and I felt like it was a really different and interesting way to explain intergenerational trauma. And FYI, this is also one of the books that I collaborated with New Sons on. New Sons, I don't know if you know of the New Sons box, but if you haven't, go to their Instagram. I collaborated with them for March for their mental health theme books. And this was actually one of the books that I suggested that will be a selection in their box. So if you're interested, go to newsons.com, okay? The next one is Don't Hug Doug. He Doesn't Like It. This book is so good and so important because essentially it's talking about consent. I'll read you the back where it says, what about hello hugs? No. What about goodbye hugs? No. What about game-winning home run hugs? Nuh-uh. What about dropped ice cream cone hugs? Still no, but I'd like another scoop. So this essentially talks about consent and like asking someone, is this okay? In this case, can I give you a hug? And then the person giving their response, whether it's yes or no or alternative ways. And so whatever their answer is, it's okay. So I felt like this book is super cute. And a way to teach young children about consent, about asking before you do something, and whatever the answer the person gives, that is okay. Okay, so that is Don't Hug Doug, He Doesn't Like It by Carrie Finison. The last one is an ebook, The Mana Paradigm Shift, Creating the Consciousness of Abundance and Freedom by Dr. Davina Kotulski. I have to tilt it a little because of the ring light. There it is. So this book was really good. It's a self-empowerment book, and it essentially kind of taps into your thoughts and like what may be holding you back from living a more enhanced or better life. And let me go through some of the contents here. Liberation, choosing freedom, breaking from mental chains. That was like my favorite one, which is like thoughts that you may have that like kind of hold you back from living a fulfilling life. How to connect, either connecting with a higher power or like a higher mind. So there is some faith and spirituality within here. How to act as if, opening your heart. This book was so good. I feel like this is one of those books that can be applied to a lot of people. Davina was on my podcast before talking about her previous self-empowerment book. So this is her newest one that I believe came out within the past month or so. FYI, she will be on the podcast. So keep an eye out for that episode. We're going to record it in a few weeks. So she will be on actually talking about herself and then also diving a little deeper into different components of this book. But I would highly recommend it. And I got this, got it as an ebook, which was kind of nice as well. So here are the books. If you hopped on here late, plus the ebook, Davina's ebook. So hopefully this was informative or helpful. If you're interested in, checking out these books, I will be putting up tonight the books that aren't on my Goodreads already. I think the only one I need to put on is Efren because I just finished that this morning. But just so you know, the Books Between Sessions, bookshop.org storefront is up, and that's where you can go to find all the books that I talk about on this live and other past lives. So the easiest way to do that is if you go to booksbetweensessions.com, click on the link in the tab where it says purchase books, and it'll open up to our bookshop.org page. As usual with bookshop.org, a percentage of what you purchase does go to local. A a portion of the purchase does go to local bookstores as usual. And then as well as a portion will also go to the podcast. And reason being is it's not going to go to me personally. It's going to be put into the podcast to really enhance the podcast, make it better, get better equipment. There's a lot of ideas that I have as far as like streaming on other sources as well. And then in the future, probably doing some in-person events, which would probably be pretty cool. So all the money that we get will be put back into the podcast from that bookshop.org page. And that's if you decide to purchase a book. You don't have to from the storefront. If anything, I created it as a reference for all the books that I do mention on the lives, because I do talk about so many books, and the way this is, it's like when I hold it up, I know it's like backwards too, so sometimes it might be kind of hard to read. So you can use our bookshop.org storefront as like a nice reference for stuff I talk about. And there's also categories on there that I haven't done lives on yet. So if you want to get a sneak preview of those, definitely go on there. So hopefully this was informative or helpful. Maybe this helped you identify a new book to read or one to add to your list. And like I said, so Jill is going to be on, or she has been on. It's already recorded. I'm going to release it. Jill's episode, the middle of this month. However, there will be another episode before that with a different guest. So March will be 2 episodes, Jill's, and another author. So it's really exciting, that I'm doing what I wanted for 2021, which is get more authors. So if you have any book suggestions, book you want me to read, to actually have on the Instagram and, say my suggestions, or on the podcast, because every book I read has the potential to be on the podcast. So who knows, you may suggest a book to me, and if anything, it'll be on Instagram, and if not, then there's a possibility that the author could possibly be on as a guest for an episode. So thank you very much for watching. It's almost 3:00. I have 3 more clients today, so I'm kind of back to back. It's been busy. It's been busy in the mental health world, which is good that, people are reaching out right now, because people are still struggling. So yeah, thanks so much for watching, and hopefully you have a great rest of your weekend. Take care. Bye.
Robin, your batter level is low.